Well, week 2 is here, which means Northwestern is back in action this week against Duke. Let's start breaking down this Duke team, starting with the offense.
You are Locked On Northwestern, your daily podcast on the Northwestern Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Northwestern, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Carter Bird, and thank you for making Locked On Northwestern your first listen every day. We are available wherever you get podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you can find us, and we are your source for anything and everything Northwestern so far this year. We're available on YouTube. You can find us there. Just search Locked On Northwestern. Make sure you subscribe and don't miss any episodes that we have. But here we are. Northwestern is preparing for its second game in week 2. They have not played in about a week and a half because they played in week 0, obviously, where they got the 31-28 win over Nebraska. Well, this week they take on the Duke Blue Devils, looking for a little revenge for last year, kind of like last year with Nebraska. But let's start talking about this Nebraska offense. And let's start with the fact that, look, they balled out in the first game. They beat Temple. I think they were around 10-point favorites in that game, but they won 30-0 in that game with a new quarterback at the helm in Riley Leonard, a sophomore, 6'4", 212 pounds out of Fairhope, Alabama. In his career before this year, last year, he was 37 of 62 for a 59.7% completion percentage for 381 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Also had 47 rushes for 173 yards and 2 touchdowns. Well, in the opener last week, he looked remarkably better. Let's say that. 24 for 30 for an 80% completion percentage, 328 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Also added 11 rushes for 64 yards. So he has 392 total yards of offense. I mean, you will take that if you're Duke. And he's a guy coming out of high school as a 3-star, number 686 national player, number 47 quarterback, number 28 player in the state of Alabama. You saw him on Saturday. He was 10.9 yards per pass attempt. He was 5.8 yards per rush. But the fact that he brings that dynamic nature to the quarterback position, can use his legs, that always makes it harder on a defense. It'll be second game in a row that Northwestern will see a mobile quarterback back there. Obviously, Riley Leonard has not seen a Power 5 defense yet because he's just seen Temple. I think it'll be an interesting matchup to see how Leonard matches up with these, how he throws the ball with these Northwestern DBs. And with that, we're going to move to the wide receivers and tight ends. First off, Jalen Calhoun, a senior, 5'11", 189 pounds out of Greenville, South Carolina. In his career in 2019, 46 catches, 420 yards, 4 touchdowns, 4 rushes for 2 yards. 2020, 39 receptions, 349 yards, 2 touchdowns, a single rush for -4 yards. Last year, 56 receptions, 718 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 rushes, 13 yards, and a touchdown. And then week 1 last week, 6 receptions for 90 yards. So he appears to be the go-to guy for this Duke team. I mean, you saw him 718 yards last year, 3 touchdowns, has 9 touchdowns on the career. I think he's somebody to keep an eye on. You'll probably see somebody like Cam Mitchell locked up on him just to try to neutralize that number 1 wide receiver. Coming out of high school, he's a 3-star in the 2019 class, number 1,178 national player, number 132 wide receiver, number 21 player in the state of South Carolina. Next up, you have an interesting one. Jordan Moore, a sophomore, 6 foot, 195 pounds, out of Sykesville, Maryland. He is a quarterback wide receiver hybrid here. Because last year playing quarterback, he was 9 of 19, 47.4% completion percentage, 95 yards, 1 touchdown, no picks, 44 rushes, 221 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Well, in their opener, he played receiver, 6 receptions, 77 yards, and a touchdown. He's a 3-star coming out of the 2021 class, number 943 national player in the country, number 65 quarterback, and number 24 player in the state of Maryland. So I think Jordan Moore can be a very interesting player in this game. I'm willing to bet Duke probably uses him in some creative ways. It wouldn't shock me to see him maybe, whether it be some trick play usage, double pass, speed sweep, pass type deal, just to have that threat out there. But he and Jalen Calhoun were the go-to guys, the reception leaders for this Duke offense in week 1. It'll be interesting to see how that progresses. But the good thing for Northwestern is you do have 2 experienced returning corners that you can match up with them. Next up, Samir Hagans, redshirt freshman, 5'10", 195 pounds, out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Last year, it had just a single catch for 5 yards, but he had 5 kick returns for 109 yards. And then, of course, last week in the opener, he had by far his biggest impact in a game. 2 receptions, 54 yards, and a touchdown. He was a 3-star in that 2021 class, number 1,287 national player in the country, number 181 wide receiver, and the number 30 player in Pennsylvania. Well, he's somebody that, he popped a big one, a 39-yard touchdown catch in that opener. And it'll be interesting to see if Northwestern can account for him while accounting for Jordan Moore and Jalen Calhoun. And then next up, you have Eli Pankow, senior, 6'3", 205 pounds, out of Pendleton, Indiana. 2019, he had 6 catches, 91 yards, 3 touchdowns, 3 rushes for 20 yards and a touchdown. 2020, 24 receptions, 241 yards and a touchdown. 4 rushes, 20 yards and a touchdown. And then 2021, 17 receptions, 233 yards and a touchdown. Last week, 4 receptions for 49 yards, was a 3-star in that 2019 class, number 594 national player in the country, number 73 wide receiver, and the number 10 player in the state of Indiana. So he's a guy that has some size at 6'3". He's a good bit bigger than the other players that we have mentioned. So far, Jordan Moore at 6 foot is the other tallest guy. I think, especially when you saw the way they used him in his first year of action in 2019, he can kind of be a red zone threat. Half his catches that season went for touchdowns. So he'll be somebody to keep an eye on as this Duke offense gets down into the red zone. Next up, Jontavius Robertson, a junior, 5'11", 193 pounds, out of Gray, Georgia. 2020, he had 4 receptions for 25 yards. Last season, 17 receptions, 117 yards, and a rush for 4 yards. Last week, just saw 1 reception for 5 yards. This is a 3-star in the 2020 class. Number 807 national player in the country. Number 125 wide receiver. Number 81 player in the state of Georgia. Just, again, another piece kind of in that smaller role that you've seen. But that's kind of what most of the guys that you'll see that make an impact in this game. Next up, we have Nicky Dalmolin, a junior tight end, 6'4", 239 pounds, out of Cumming, Georgia. In 2020, he had 3 receptions for 42 yards. Last year was his breakout year, though. 15 receptions, 121 yards, and a touchdown. Last week, just 2 catches for 7 yards. He's a 3-star in the 2020 class, number 1,034 national player, number 152 wide receiver, and the number 109 player in the state of Georgia. Just a guy that's got to keep an eye on. He doesn't get a ton of usage in the passing game, I mean, you saw 15 catches over 12 games last year, and you saw 2 receptions last week for 7 yards. But this group, it'll be with Riley Leonard and the way he looked in the opener, with the way that he played, 80% completion percentage, 300 plus yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks, using his legs. He'll be a challenge for this Northwestern secondary because you can't purely lock in man on man or man to man and just not have eyes on the quarterback. That'll be something to see that's interesting. I do think that as long as Northwestern can account for Jalen Calhoun and Jordan Moore, especially Jalen Calhoun, just because he is that returning receiver. He's kind of their Malik Washington. I think that this Northwestern DBs group can handle these pass catchers for Duke. I think it'll be a challenge. But if you can somewhat keep Trey Palmer and that Nebraska group of skill position players under wraps, I feel that you're probably not going to see the same athleticism from wall to wall. But I mean, it'll still be a challenge for this Northwestern DBs group. So in a second here, we're going to move on to the running backs and talk about those. But first, let me tell you about our friends at BetOnline. BetOnline is your number one source for all your pro and college football betting needs and sports info this season. Find all the latest football league developments, game matchups, news, and podcasts, including this year's opening week's games. BetOnline is also your continued source for all your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. The fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, so let's talk about these Duke running backs because it's a very, very deep group. The top end may not be as good as Northwestern's group, but they have just as many, if not more, bodies in that group that kind of all have different roles. It'll be interesting to see how they are deployed in this game against Northwestern. But first off, let's go with Jalen Coleman, a redshirt junior, 6'1", 205 pounds, out of Matthews, North Carolina. In his career in 2019, 15 rushes, 42 yards. 2020, he redshirted. He tore his Achilles in spring football and missed the season. 2021, 11 rushes, 14 yards. And then last week, 8 rushes, 43 yards, and a touchdown. Was a 3-star in the 2019 class. Number 1,732 national player in the country. The number 111 running back and the number 73 player in the state of North Carolina. Next up, you have Jordan Waters, redshirt junior, 6 foot, 214 pounds, out of Fairmont, North Carolina. In his career in 2019, 2 rushes, 8 yards. 2020, 16 rushes, 100 yards, 2 touchdowns with a reception for -7 yards. And in 2021, you had 39 rushes, 197 yards, a touchdown, 6 receptions, 76 yards, and a touchdown. Last week, 5 rushes, 32 yards, 1 reception, 14 yards. So he's a bigger guy. He's a little bit bigger than Jalen Coleman. Both guys are big guys, but bigger guy. I believe he's the only back that caught a pass. But in the 2019 recruiting class, he was a 3-star, number 1,198 national player, number 137 wide receiver. So coming out of high school, he's ranked as a wide receiver, turned into a running back, number 47 player in the state of North Carolina. Next up, Jaquez Moore, sophomore, 5'10", 195 pounds, out of Live Oak, Florida. Last season, 5 rushes, 12 yards. Last week, 7 rushes, 25 yards. So he's already blown his career production out of the water in one game. Was a 3-star in the 2021 class, number 1,290 national player in the country, number 96 athlete, and the number 165 player in the state of Florida. Next up, Rashawn Allen, a senior, 5'9", 220 pounds, out of Canton, Michigan. He's a Lehigh transfer that in his career at Lehigh. In 2018, he had 68 rushes for 328 yards, 3 touchdowns, 4 receptions for 18 yards. 2019, 124 rushes, 334 yards, no touchdowns, 7 receptions, 48 yards. In the spring of 2021, because they did not play in the fall of 2020, he had 38 rushes, 128 yards, and a touchdown, 5 receptions, 42 yards. And then finally, in the normal 2021 season, 85 rushes, 222 yards, 1 touchdown, 9 receptions, 45 yards. Was a 2-star in the 2018 class, number 161 running back, and the number 56 player in the state of Michigan. So, again, really big back. They have 3 guys over 200 pounds, 3 guys over 205 pounds. I mean, even two guys at 214 or heavier. I mean, they've got some guys who can be physical and run between the tackles. They also have a little bit more of a smaller back in Jaquez Moore at 5'10", 195. Nobody with production that blows you away, even in week 1. I mean, they were spread out a good bit. You had Rashawn Allen had 3 carries for 9 yards. You had 5 rushes for 32 yards with a reception for 14 yards out of Jordan Waters. Jaquez Moore, 7 rushes, 25 yards. And then Jalen Coleman, 8 rushes, 43 yards, and a touchdown. None of that production really blows you out of the water. Jalen Coleman probably had the best day, running for about, 5 yards a carry. Jordan Waters had 6 yards a carry. Coleman had that 1 touchdown. You had Jaquez Moore about 3.5, 4 yards a carry. Rashawn Allen had his 3 yards per carry. Nothing that super worries you, and then especially, I mean, the quarterback was the leading rusher. It is a deep group though. It's gonna be something to keep an eye on how they are used in this game against Northwestern, because in the game where you get up, 24-0 in the first half. I mean, it's easy to kind of keep a lot of what you were going to do against a Power 5 team like Northwestern under wraps. So it remains to be seen exactly how they are used. But yeah, that's that running back group to keep an eye on. I still kind of like this. I like Northwestern's linebackers between Mueller and Gallagher and everybody else in that room, and how they will probably match up with these running backs. But it remains to be seen. Just a second, we're going to talk about the offensive line for Duke and how they match up with this Northwestern defensive line. So let's start right there. Graham Barton Jr., 6'5", 311 pounds, out of Brentwood, Tennessee. He's the left tackle. He is a preseason All-ACC, 3rd team by Phil Steele and Athlon. 2020, he had 6 games and 5 starts at center. 2021, 12 starts, all at left tackle, and then he obviously started last week. Was a 3-star guy in the 2020 class, number 672 national player in the country, number 41 offensive guard, and the number 19 player in the state of Tennessee. Maurice McIntyre at left guard, redshirt senior, 6'2", 319 pounds, out of Jacksonville, North Carolina. Played in 2 games in 2018, 12 games with a single start in 2019, 9 games, 3 starts in 2020, 12 games, 10 starts last year, and is back at left guard starting this season as well. 3-star in the 2018 class, number 1,385 national player in the country, number 59 offensive guard, and the number 44 player in the state of North Carolina. At center, you have Jacob Monk, a senior, 6'3", 298 pounds, out of Clayton, North Carolina. Was a preseason All-ACC 4th team selection by Phil Steele. 2019, he made 12 starts at right tackle. 2020, 11 starts at right guard. And last season, 12 starts at right guard. He obviously started last week at center. 3-star in the 2019 class. Number 479 national player in the country, number 27 offensive guard, and the number 20 player in the state of North Carolina. So the left side is set. All those guys have a ton of experience. played in a lot of games at Duke. It's the right side where you could see a little bit of fluctuation of who's out there. First up is right guard Chance Lytle, grad transfer, 6'7", 329 pounds out of San Antonio, Texas. Transfer from Colorado. At Colorado, he played in 30 games, making 4 starts. Last week was actually Duke's highest graded offensive lineman. He's a 3-star in the 2016 class. So he's been in college forever. I can't imagine being in college that long. That would be horrible. Number 1,910 national player in the country. Number 154 offensive tackle. And the number 225 player in the state of Texas. Potentially while lining up at right guard as well is Brian Foley, another grad transfer, 6'4", 307 pounds out of Clarendon Hills, Illinois, a Holy Cross transfer. Last year at Duke, saw action in 2 games. It's an unranked guy coming out of high school. I think you're probably going to see more of Chance Lytle than you are Brian Foley, but it's going to be 2 guys that to keep an eye on, 2 grad transfers who have come in and helped this team. Next up at right tackle, you have Andre Harris, a grad transfer, 6'4", 312 pounds out of Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Arkansas State transfer. At Arkansas State, he played in 46 games, making 43 starts. He's a 2-star in the 2017 class, number 2,493 national player in the country, number 121 offensive guard, and the number 33 player in Oklahoma. With him at right tackle, you have John Gelati, a redshirt junior, 6'5", 304 pounds out of Roebuck, South Carolina. 2020, he saw action in 10 games. Last season, 10 games, 9 starts. He is the returning starter, but then obviously you have the Arkansas State transfer with a ton of experience. Both those guys you probably see in different capacities on the field on Saturday. He's a 3-star in the 2019 recruiting class, number 1,139 national player in the country, number 91 offensive tackle, and the number 20 player in the state of South Carolina. So this offensive line, similarly, especially on that left side and then at right tackle, similarly to the Northwestern offensive line, plenty of experience, plenty of starting experience. And then with Chance Lytle too, a group that can kind of be on that right side, be shuffled around, figure out different combinations. Going up against a Northwestern offensive line that played well in week 0, that bounced back from a brutal first year where 2021, where they allowed a ton of rushing yards. Sack numbers weren't huge. But now, I mean, you saw Fitz yesterday talk about he credited Sean McLaughlin and Adetomowa Adeboare in making plays, and setting the tone for that defensive line. The front 7 was a lot better in week 0 against a really big Nebraska team. A Nebraska offensive line that's probably the biggest group that Northwestern's going to see all year. I think that if Northwestern can replicate what they did against Nebraska, I feel really good about the front 7's ability to hold up against this Duke offensive line. It'll be something that I'll have my eye on Saturday. But on the whole, I know this Duke offense put up big numbers against Temple on Saturday. 500 yards of offense. Temple's a little different than Northwestern right now, I think. Much like you've been hearing, Northwestern has their edge back. I think the DBs will play better than they did in the opener. At times could be a little up and down. And then I like where the front 7's at. I think they've made a ton of progress from last season. But this is the side of the ball that I think is going to be the most interesting matchup, because that Duke offense showed some explosiveness in the opening game against Temple. Well, Northwestern um, survived. Nebraska got rolling early. I mean, you hear Fitz talk about they need to start quicker this week. It'll be something to keep an eye on. Can they? I think getting a 3 and out on that opening drive would be really, really big for this Northwestern defense. But yeah, so that's gonna be something I have an eye on. I keep an eye on. Be sure to come back later this week as we look at the Duke defense and how it matches up with that Northwestern offense, and specifically that Northwestern offensive line. Still my favorite group on this team, and might be Fitz's favorite group too. But yeah, I'm your host, Carter Bird. Thank you for joining us on Locked On Northwestern. You can find us wherever you get podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever. Thank you for making us your first listen. You can follow me on Twitter at CarterBird13 and on Instagram at CarterBird13 as well. We're on YouTube. Just search Locked On Northwestern. Hit subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts on YouTube. Make sure you don't miss an episode. But again, thank you for making Locked On Northwestern your first listen every day. Now for your second listen, go check out the Ultimate Pro Football Preview 2022, an 8-episode extravaganza to get you ready for the NFL season. The local team experts of the Locked On Podcast Network, plus a betting angle from Lee Sterling of Locked On Bets, all combining into one ultimate NFL preview. Search for Ultimate Pro Football Preview 2022 on your Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. So come back later this week as we continue to preview this Duke team. We're going to take a look at their defense tomorrow's episode, and then Thursday's episode we're actually going to have a crossover with Locked On Blue Devils, Locked On Duke, JJ Jackson, who's the host over there. He does a great job. Guy who I've known for a while. We're gonna hop on and talk it out between our two shows and figure out how this game's gonna play out. So you don't want to miss that. Make sure you tune into that later this week.